My mother told me on Christmas Eve that because I was childless, it was my job to support them. She said this in the house I paid for, in front of the family I fed. So, I made one phone call to my lawyer and set in motion a plan that would teach them the true value of my job. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The exhaustion that hit me when I turned off my car engine wasn't just physical. It was a deep, cellular weariness, the kind that settles in your bones after months of relentless stress. It was Christmas Eve, 7 p.m. My latest project, a massive software migration, had finally, blessedly, gone live an hour ago. I'd been at my desk since 5 a.m., surviving on stale coffee and the fumes of burnout. While the rest of the world was singing carols and drinking eggnog, I was navigating a last-minute server crisis. Now, sitting in the driveway of my mother's house, a house I paid the mortgage on, all I wanted was a hot shower and a quiet corner. I hauled the gifts from my trunk, my arms aching. I always overcompensated. Designer purses for my mother, Cynthia, and sister-in-law, Claire. The newest, most obscenely expensive gaming console for my brother, Mark. Extravagant, educational toys for their 2 children. It was a repeat performance of every birthday and holiday for the last 15 years. I provided the wow, and they provided the expectation. I let myself in, dragging the bags. The smell of roasted turkey and pine hit me, but it didn't feel welcoming. It just felt like a stage set for a play I was tired of acting in. "She's here," Cynthia trilled from the kitchen. She appeared, wiping her hands on an apron, her perfectly coiffed silver hair unruffled. My father, Finley, was asleep in his recliner, the television muttering about a blizzard. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Merry Christmas." Cynthia's eyes immediately went to the mountain of gifts I'd piled by the door. "Oh, Edith, you shouldn't have," she said, using the exact same tone she used every year, a flimsy veil for "you'd better have." "It's nothing," I murmured, rubbing my temples where a migraine was beginning to pulse. "The food smells wonderful." "Mark and Claire are just getting the kids settled," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. "They've been waiting for you to help with the final preparations. The scalloped potatoes need to be topped, and the green beans aren't even snapped yet." I winced. The thought of standing in a hot kitchen under fluorescent lights felt like a physical blow. "Mom, would it be okay if I just sat down for 10 minutes? The project at work was a nightmare. I haven't really slept since Tuesday. I just need a moment." Cynthia's smile didn't just fade, it curdled. She crossed her arms, and the warmth evaporated from the room, replaced by the familiar, icy disappointment she was so skilled at wielding. "A moment, Edith, it's Christmas Eve. We're a family, we're all tired." "I know, but I'm truly exhausted. I feel like I might be sick, just 10 minutes on the couch." That's when she said it, the line that would sever the last thread. She scoffed, a short, sharp sound of derision. "Exhausted? From what? Sitting at a computer? You don't know what real exhaustion is. You don't have a husband to look after or children to raise. You have nothing but time." I stared at her, my blood running cold. Behind her, Mark had emerged from the hallway. He was 39, perpetually between projects, and heard every word. He just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a little smirk on his face. He was waiting for me to fold, just like I always did. Cynthia wasn't finished. "It's your job to help us," she declared, her voice rising with self-righteousness. "You're the one with the big career. We all have to do our part. Your part is just a little different. My part, my job, to be the family ATM, the beast of burden, the designated helper because my life, being single and child-free, was considered empty space, a resource to be colonized." I looked from my mother's hard, entitled face to my brother's lazy smirk. I looked at my father, blissfully snoring in the chair I'd bought him. I looked at the gifts I'd nearly bankrupted my sleep schedule to purchase. And then I looked at the front door. A strange, sharp clarity cut through my fatigue. It was like a light switch flicking on in a dark, cluttered room. I saw the clutter. I saw the exit. I didn't say a word. I didn't yell or cry. I simply dropped my purse strap from my shoulder. I let it thud onto the floor next to the pile of gifts. "Edith?" Cynthia asked, her tone shifting from commanding to confused. "What are you doing? Stop being so dramatic." I turned my back on her, on all of them. I grabbed the handle of the front door, opened it, and walked out. NTO the cold, silent night. As I pulled my car keys from my pocket, I heard the door open behind me. "Edith, where are you going? Get back here, you're ruining Christmas." I got in my car, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway, the crunch of the snow under my tires the only sound I made. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was almost clarifying. The 20-minute drive to my own quiet, empty apartment felt like an eternity. My hands were shaking so hard on the steering wheel that I had to grip it with white-knuckled force. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a seismic, rolling wave of grief and rage. It wasn't just the words. It was the absolute, unvarnished truth behind them. It was the casual, brutal dismissal of my entire life, my sacrifices, my 70-hour work weeks. My job wasn't my career, it was to serve them. When I walked into my apartment, the silence was a relief. I dropped my keys, shed my coat, and collapsed onto my sofa. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, watching the snow fall outside my window, the blinking Christmas lights on my neighbor's balcony mocking me. My phone, which I'd put on silent during the project launch, was dark, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way. As if on cue, it lit up. The caller ID was Mom. I stared at it. It buzzed 3 times, stopped, and then immediately lit up again. Mom, then again. Mom. After the 4th missed call, a text message appeared. "Where are you? Your father is upset. You have made a terrible scene." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. My father, who was asleep. I had made a scene by leaving. Another text, this time from Mark. "Way to go, Edith. Mom is in tears. You really ruined Christmas. What is wrong with you? Just come back and apologize so we can eat." Apologize? The audacity of it was breathtaking. I felt the migraine slam into my skull, a spike of pain right behind my eyes. I was the one who was supposed to apologize. My phone rang again. This time I picked it up. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to hear it one more time. "What is wrong with you?" Cynthia shrieked. "No hello. No, are you okay?" "I'm tired, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I told you I was tired." "You're selfish, Edith. That's what you are. After everything we do for you." "Everything you do for me?" I cut her off, and the ice in my own voice surprised me. "What exactly is that? Do you mean the way you've let me pay your mortgage for 15 years? Or the way you let me fund Mark's business that never makes a single dollar? Or how I pay for Claire's car lease and the kids' private school? What is it that you do for me, Mom?" There was a sudden, sharp silence on the other end. I had never, not once, spoken of it. It was the family's secret, the foundation of our entire relationship. Edith pays, we pretend she doesn't. "How dare you?" she finally whispered, her voice vibrating with genuine theatrical offense. "We are your family. This is what family does." "No, Mom," I said, standing up and walking to my window. "This is what I do. You just take." You ungrateful." She was sputtering, searching for a word big enough to wound me. "You'll be back. You'll be back tomorrow with your tail between your legs, begging for forgiveness when you realize you have no one else." She hung up. I stood there, the phone heavy in my hand. "You have no one else." A cold smile touched my lips. That's where she was wrong. I had my lawyer. I had my bank manager. And I had a very, very clear memory of a conversation from 15 years ago when my father's terrible investments had nearly cost them their home. I had stepped in. I had saved them. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten the fine print. They had forgotten who exactly owned the deed. My family's financial dependence on me hadn't happened overnight. It was a slow creep, a series of temporary emergencies that had solidified into a permanent way of life. It began 15 years ago when I was 29 and had just landed my first major promotion. My father, Finley, a sweet but terribly naive man, had been day trading his retirement savings and had gotten entangled in a bad investment. They were months from foreclosure. I was single, making good money, and I couldn't bear the thought of my parents losing their home. So I stepped in. I cashed out my own stocks, drained my savings, and paid off the delinquent balance. The bank, seeing my stable, high-income job, agreed to refinance, but they would only do it if the mortgage was in my name. I was the sole borrower. The deed was transferred entirely to me. At the time, it seemed like a simple formality. "It's just paperwork, honey," Cynthia had cooed, "to protect your investment." It was, she'd assured me, still their house. I had believed her. I had also believed her a few years later when my brother, Mark, graduated with a graphic design degree and boundless confidence. He was going to start his own freelance business. He just needed a small loan for equipment. That loan, of course, was never repaid. Then came his business expenses, which were really just his rent. Then he met Claire and they decided to get married. I paid for the wedding. Just to get them started, Cynthia had explained. When their first child was born, they needed a safer car. Claire deserved a nice SUV. I co-signed the lease. When the kids were old enough for school, public school just wouldn't do. They had to go to the best private academy. "It's for your niece and nephew's future, Edith," Mark had insisted, as if I were a monster for even questioning the $30,000 a year tuition. My job in the family was clear. I was the provider. Cynthia, my mother, was the architect of this dynamic. She was a woman who had always valued appearances above all else. She loved playing the role of the generous matriarch, hosting elaborate Christmases and bragging to her friends about her successful son and her wonderful grandchildren. She never mentioned that I funded her entire lifestyle. She had retired early, as soon as I'd taken over the mortgage, claiming stress. My father, Finley, simply went along. He was a passive, quiet man who was content to let Cynthia manage the family, and by extension, my bank account. He just wanted to watch his television and have a nice dinner. Mark was the golden child, the boy who could do no wrong. He was creative and sensitive. My success, in their eyes, wasn't a product of my intelligence or my brutal work ethic. It was just a happy accident, a stroke of luck that I was good with computers. I was the practical, unglamorous but necessary utility. Mark was the art. Their image of me was so fixed, their entitlement so entrenched, that they never once considered the source of the money. They saw me as a machine that had just broken down. They genuinely believed I would be back, as my mother had shrieked. They couldn't conceive of a reality where I wouldn't. They had forgotten that the machine had an off switch, and they'd forgotten that I was the only one with her finger on it. I did not call them on Christmas Day. I turned off my phone, made myself a pot of tea, and slept for 14 hours. When I woke up, it was dark outside again. The feeling of clarity hadn't faded. It had sharpened into a cold, hard resolve. My phone, when I finally turned it on, had 37 missed calls and a cascade of text messages. They ranged from Claire's manipulative guilt trips. The kids miss their Aunt Edith. They keep asking why you left them. To Mark's outright threats, if you don't pick up, I'm coming to your apartment. You're acting insane. To Cynthia's mix of commands and feigned concern, this isn't funny, Edith. Call me immediately. We are worried sick. Worried sick, not about me, but about their allowance. I ignored them all. The next morning, December 26th, while the rest of the world was returning unwanted gifts, I was on the phone with my lawyer. Sarah, hi, it's Edith. Merry Christmas. Listen, I need to make some structural changes to my portfolio. Sarah had been my estate lawyer for years, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had helped me set up my will and investment accounts. Structural changes, okay, what's on your mind? First, I said, pulling up my bank statements on my laptop, I have several recurring automatic payments that I need to stop. Immediately. One is a car lease for a Claire last name. One is a tuition payment to the Northwood Academy. And one is a monthly transfer to a business account for Mark last name designs. There was a pause on Sarah's end. Okay, she said slowly. That's simple enough. You can do that through your bank. Why are you calling me? Because of the second part, I said, taking a deep breath. I need you to begin the process of selling the property at 124 Willow Creek Drive. This time, the silence was longer. Edith, Sarah said, isn't that where your parents live? Yes, the house is entirely in my name. The mortgage is in my name. I have been paying it and all the property taxes for 15 years. I no longer wish to own it. I see, Sarah said, and I could hear the faint sound of typing. This is a significant move, Edith, especially right after Christmas. It was a Christmas Eve revelation, Sarah. Got it. Well, the legal part is straightforward. It's your asset. You can sell it whenever you like. We'll need to serve them with a formal notice to vacate. Given the long-term, non-lease tenancy, we'll give them 60 days. That's generous. That's fine, I said. And Edith, what about the business you're funding? Mark's, was it? I seem to recall setting that up for you. It's a sole proprietorship, correct? Funded from your investment account. Yes, I said. And you are the sole proprietor, she stated. It wasn't a question. Yes, I am. So when you stop the payments, you're not just cutting him off. You're effectively dissolving his business. All the business assets, the computers, the car leased under that account, are legally your assets. A cold thrill went through me. I hadn't even considered that. Mark's entire professional identity was legally me. Good to know, I said. Let's start with a notice to vacate. Send it via certified mail, and I'll handle the bank. After I hung up with Sarah, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank. My fingers hovered over the mouse. This was the moment. 15 years of resentment, of being taken for granted, of being the invisible engine running their lives. I clicked, Stop automatic payment. Confirmed, I clicked again. Transfer funds. I emptied the business account for Mark Designs, transferring the $8,000 balance back to my own savings. I clicked a third time. Stop automatic payment. Tuition, confirmed, and the fourth, the car lease, confirmed. Then I called my bank's private client manager. Hi, David. I need to close the credit card for my authorized user, Cynthia last name. Yes, effective immediately. The trap wasn't just the house. The trap was the entire financial ecosystem I had built and which they had mistaken for the natural world. I had just introduced an extinction-level event. The first explosion happened 48 hours later. I was at my desk, deep in the project's post. Mortem analysis when my phone, which I had left on vibrate, began to dance across the wood. The caller ID was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. He called back, and again, and again. Finally, a text message came through that was just a string of incoherent, furious keyboard smashes. It was followed by one that was chillingly clear. My business account is empty. My card was declined. What did you do? It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I let him stew for an hour before he called again. This time, I answered. Edith, he roared. I had to pull the phone away from my ear. You stole my money. You stole all my money. The bank said the account was empty. Hello, Mark, I said calmly, sipping my tea. It's not your money. It's my money. It's an account I own for a business I am the sole proprietor of. I decided to reallocate my funds. You, of all people, should understand a simple business decision. He was sputtering, a noise of pure infantile rage. But, my clients, my bills, my car payment. Ah, about that. The car isn't yours either, Mark. It's a business asset. And since I'm dissolving the business, I'll be in touch about recovering it. I'd advise you not to drive it. What? You're recovering my car? You can't do that. I can, and I am, but that's not why you called. You called because your card was declined. A hard lesson in budgeting, I suppose. You should try it sometime. I could hear him breathing, thick and heavy with panic. Mom was right. You're evil. You're trying to ruin me. Why are you doing this? Your mother made the terms perfectly clear on Christmas Eve, Mark. I'm just finally accepting my job. My job is to be the childless, husbandless woman with nothing but time. And I've decided my time is better spent managing my own assets, not yours. This is, I'm coming to your apartment. I wouldn't, I said, my voice as cold as the snow outside. The locks have been changed, and the concierge has your photo. You're not permitted on the property. I hung up. The silence that followed was delicious, but I knew it was just the appetizer. The main course would be Cynthia. It came the next day, a Saturday. The certified letter from Sarah had arrived. This time, the call was from a blocked number. I answered. It was Cynthia, and she was weeping. Not the crocodile tears of offense from Christmas, but the raw, terrified sobs of someone who has just had the rug pulled out from under them. Edith, honey, there's been a mistake. What's that, Mom? We got a letter from a lawyer. Her voice cracked. It's an eviction notice. It says we have to leave our home. It says we have 60 days. Edith, you have to call them. You have to fix this. It's a horrible, horrible mistake. It's not a mistake, Mom, I said, standing and walking to my window. What do you mean? This is our house. Finley and I have lived here for 30 years. And for the last 15, I have paid for it. The deed is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. The property tax bills, which you forgot to pay and which almost cost you the house, are paid by me. It is my house, and I have decided to sell it. Sell it, she shrieked, the tears vanishing, replaced by the familiar, venomous anger. Sell our home, you monster, you can't, your father. Your father is distraught. I heard Finley's voice in the background, thin and reedy. What's going on, Cynthia? Is that Edith? Tell her I said hello. He had no idea. He's distraught, Mom. Or are you? You just realized that your credit card was declined at the grocery store, didn't you? And Mark called you, hysterical about his car. It's all falling apart, isn't it? She was quiet. I had her. You are nothing, she finally hissed, her voice low and dangerous. You are a cold, empty woman, and you will die alone. We are the only family you have, and you are destroying us. You destroyed this, Mom. You just didn't realize it until the money stopped. You have 60 days to find a new place to live. I'd suggest Mark and Claire's apartment, but given that I'm also stopping the tuition payments for the kids, I imagine they'll be downsizing soon, too. I hung up the phone. The shockwave was complete. The fallout was just beginning. The next 2 weeks were a siege. My family, realizing their individual attacks were failing, regrouped. The 37 missed calls a day strategy was replaced by something more insidious, a coordinated guilt hand smear campaign. They started with Claire. She sent me a long, rambling email, complete with photos of my niece and nephew. Edith, I know you are angry, but please think of the children. They are innocent in all this. Mark is a wreck. He can't sleep. He feels like his life is over. And now, Northwood Academy called. They said the spring semester tuition was recalled. Edith, we can't pull them out of school. It will traumatize them. How can you be so cruel as to punish 2 little children just because you had a fight with your mother? I forwarded the email to Sarah, my lawyer, with a single note. For the record. Then came the extended family. My Aunt Millie, Cynthia's sister, called me. Edith, dear, she began, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Your mother is just beside herself. She told me what's going on, that you're having some kind of breakdown, that you're selling their house out from under them. Honey, we all say things we don't mean at Christmas. Aunt Millie, I interrupted, my voice polite but firm. Did Mom also tell you that I have been paying her mortgage for 15 years? Did she tell you I've paid for every car, vacation, and designer purse she's owned since 2010? Did she tell you that she believes it's my job to do so because I'm single? Aunt Millie sputtered. Well, she said you were helping, as family does. I'm done helping, Aunt Millie. Thank you for your concern. I hung up. But they weren't done. The real escalation came from Mark. If he couldn't use his business, and he couldn't use his wife's guilt, he would try to use the law, or at least his idiotic interpretation of it. I received a second certified letter. This one wasn't from Sarah. It was a cease and desist from a cheap local lawyer, alleging unlawful seizure of business assets and emotional distress. Mark was threatening to sue me for his company. I called Sarah immediately, laughing. You're not going to believe this. Oh, I believe it, she said grimly. I just ran the full background check you asked for. The business was just the start. Your brother, Mark, has a string of debts you don't even know about. He has 2 outstanding personal loans and he's defaulted on, get this, a high-interest loan for a speedboat. A speedboat, Edith. I was stunned. A boat? Where did he get the money for? Oh, wait. He told me that was a new client retainer. He needed me to advance him. He's been using your money to finance a lifestyle even you weren't aware of, Sarah said. And your parents knew. The boat loan cosigner was your father, Finley. They've all been lying to you. For years. The last flicker of doubt, the tiny, lingering ember of am I the monster, was extinguished. They weren't just entitled, they were conspirators in a long-term, calculated fraud against me. Sarah said, "This cease and desist is garbage. It's an intimidation tactic. We will respond with a full accounting of the Mark Design's sole proprietorship, showing all funds originated from you and all assets belong to you. We will also include a copy of the deed to your parents' house. And I think it's time we mention the boat. We will send a copy of this response not just to his lawyer, but to your parents as well." The second confrontation was not a phone call. It was a full-scale ambush. A week later, on a Sunday, my concierge buzzed. "Ms. Edith, your family is here." They are, rather insistent. "I am not available," I said. "They refuse to leave the lobby, ma'am. They are causing a disturbance." I sighed. "Fine, let them up, but please send security up with them." 2 minutes later, there was a furious pounding on my door. I opened it to find Cynthia, Finley, Mark, and Claire, all looking windswept and furious. A large security guard stood impassively behind them. "You," Cynthia shrieked, pointing a finger at me. "You're not just kicking us out, you're trying to send your brother to jail, a boat. You're telling his lawyer about a boat." "I'm not telling him anything," I said, leaning against my doorframe. "Sarah is simply responding to his legal threat with a statement of fact. Mark, you threatened to sue me. Did you think I wouldn't respond?" Mark, for the first time, looked terrified. The lazy smirk was gone, replaced by the pale, clammy look of a cornered rat. That was just to get you to talk." "Well, you have my attention," I said, "and you have Sarah's. And now you have the attention of your other creditors, who will be very interested to know that your primary source of income has dried up." "Edith, please," my father, Finley, finally spoke. He stepped forward, his hands trembling. This is just a misunderstanding. We can talk about this. Your mother, she's not well." She was well enough to tell me my life was empty and that my only job was to serve her, I said, my gaze hardening. "And you were well enough to co-sign a fraudulent loan for your son, using my money as the collateral. Did you think I'd never find out, Dad?" Finley's face went white. He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. Cynthia saw she was losing. "You're tearing this family apart," she screamed. "No, Mom," I said, my voice dropping to a calm, final whisper. "I'm just turning off the life support. The family was already dead. You killed it." I looked at the security guard. "They're trespassing. Please escort them out." As they were herded back toward the elevator, Cynthia had one last pathetic shot. "You'll regret this. You'll be all alone." I smiled, a real genuine smile. "I'm not alone, I'm free." I closed the door. The 60-day notice was set to expire on the last day of February. In that time, my family's attempts to contact me became more and more pathetic. They devolved from threats and guilt to desperate, one-line texts. "Please talk to us." "Edith, call your mother. We can fix this." But they never, not once, included the words, "We're sorry." They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted the money back on. I had given Sarah instructions to list the house on March 1st. My parents, it seemed, were in denial, convinced I would blink. They made no effort to pack, no effort to look for a new place. They were staging a sit-in, believing I wouldn't have the heart to actually make my elderly parents homeless. The last week of February, Sarah confirmed my suspicions. They're still there, Edith. The realtor did a drive-by. Lights are on, cars are in the drive. They're calling your bluff. We need to be prepared to proceed with a formal eviction on Monday. But I had a better idea, a more public one. Claire in. A last-ditch effort to prove they were a normal, happy family had been posting all over social media about a big family dinner for my father's 69th birthday. It was scheduled for Saturday, March 2nd, at their house. My house. The invitation I received via text, full of smiley face emojis, was transparently a trap. A final attempt to get me in that house, where the combined emotional weight of the family could be brought to bear on me. Sarah, I said on the phone, are you free on Saturday evening, and can you bring the realtor? Saturday night, I didn't arrive with a gift. I arrived in a separate car from Sarah and Mr. Henderson, the realtor, a tall, imposing man in a sharp suit. I had asked them to park down the street and wait for my text. I walked up the driveway, the same driveway I'd pulled into on Christmas Eve. I could hear music and laughter from inside. They were really putting on a show. I rang the bell. Mark opened the door. His face, when he saw me, was a bizarre mix of hope and resentment. Edith, you came. You invited me, I said, stepping inside. The scene was surreal. The dining room was set for a feast. Aunt Millie was there, along with a few of my parents' old friends. Everyone stopped talking when they saw me. Cynthia emerged from the kitchen, a strained, brittle smile plastered on her face. Edith, darling, we were so worried you wouldn't make it. She bustled over to hug me, but I held up a hand. I'm not here for the party, Mom. The smile wavered. What? What do you mean, dear? It's your father's birthday. His birthday was last week, I said. This isn't a party, it's an ambush, and I'm afraid it's not going to work. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice turning sharp. You've all had 60 days to vacate my property. That notice expired yesterday. Instead of packing, you decided to throw a dinner party. Did you really think I was bluffing? The color drained from Cynthia's face. The other guests looked around, confused. Our house, Finley stammered, standing up from the table. My house, I corrected him gently, and it's time to go. You wouldn't, Cynthia shrieked, dropping the hostess pretense. You wouldn't throw your own parents out in front of their friends. You were happy to humiliate me in front of my family, I said. Now, please, get your coats. This is insane, Mark stepped forward. You're insane, you can't do this. We haven't found a place. That sounds like a you problem, Mark, not a me problem. I took out my phone and sent a text. We're ready. A moment later, the doorbell rang again. Cynthia, distracted, snapped, Mark, get the door. Mark opened it to find Sarah and Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson was holding a large, for sale sign. Hello, Sarah said, stepping inside, her voice projecting beautifully into the sudden tomb-like silence. I'm Sarah Klein, Ms. Edith's legal counsel, and this is Mr. Henderson from Prime Realty. We're here to begin the assessment for the sale of the property. Please don't let us interrupt your packing. Aunt Millie let out a little gasp. Mr. Henderson smiled broadly at the shocked guests. Pardon us, he said, walking past them into the living room. My, what wonderful natural light. This will photograph beautifully once the clutter is cleared. We're planning the first open house for next weekend. This was the moment. The public, undeniable, systematic exposure. Cynthia looked at her friends, their faces a mixture of pity and horrified fascination. She was utterly humiliated. How could you? She whispered, her entire body shaking. I learned from the best, Mom, I said. I looked at Mark, whose face was ashen. Mark, Claire, I'd suggest you pack your bags, too. Since you're moving out of your apartment and Dad's house is now for sale, you'll all need to find a new place to live. Maybe you can all get a place together. Your family, after all. It's your job to help each other. Mark looked at Cynthia, his eyes wide with panic. The golden child, finally realizing the bank was closed. He didn't look at his mother with love. He looked at her with the dawning, furious horror of a parasite whose host has just died. That, right there, was my victory. I turned and walked out the door, leaving Sarah and the realtor to begin their work. Their voices discussing staging and curb appeal as the party completely dissolved behind me. The downfall was not a single crash. It was a slow, pathetic collapse. The public humiliation at the party was the final blow. My parents' friends, who had only ever heard Cynthia's version of the difficult, ungrateful daughter, now had the full picture. The social exile was immediate. Legally, they had no leg to stand on. With the threat of a formal, sheriff-led eviction hanging over them, my parents and Finley, Mark, and Claire. Finley being the passive father, Mark the brother, and Claire the sister-in-law, not F. Inley as the father, which was a previous misunderstanding, finally vacated the house. They took only what they could fit into a U-Haul, leaving behind 15 years of furniture and junk I'd paid for. I had it all professionally cleared and donated. The house, in a hot market, sold in 4 days for 20% over asking price. The check, when it cleared, was the most satisfying I had ever received. Mark's life unraveled just as quickly. Without my funding, his business vanished. His car was repossessed. The lawsuit he'd threatened was dropped when Sarah sent the blistering reply, which included the promissory notes for the boat loan. He and Claire were forced to pull their children from private school. Claire, facing the reality of a budget for the first time in her adult life, got a job as a cashier at a grocery store. Mark, I heard through the grapevine, was doing delivery driving. Cynthia and Finley were the most tragic. They had no savings. Their combined social security wasn't enough to rent a decent apartment. They ended up moving into a small, cramped 2-bedroom unit with Mark, Claire, and their 2 children. The golden child was now their landlord, and by all accounts, he was a resentful and bitter one. Cynthia, who had once bragged about her son's creativity, was now a full-time, unpaid nanny, trapped in a tiny apartment with the consequences of her own making. I used the proceeds from the sale of the house to do something I hadn't done in my entire adult life. I took a vacation, a real one. I bought a first-class ticket to Italy and spent 3 months there. I saw Florence. I learned to make pasta in Tuscany. I walked through the ruins of Rome. I turned my phone off for weeks at a time. When I came back, I was a different person. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by a calm, quiet sense of peace. I had one final piece of business. I had Sarah set up a trust. I put a significant portion of my money into it with strict instructions. It was to be used for my niece and nephew, and only them. It would pay for their state college tuition and basic living expenses, but the funds were to be managed by a third-party trustee. My family would never see a dime of it. It was my one, final act. protecting the children from the cycle their parents had created. I never spoke to Cynthia, Finley, or Mark again. There were no apologies, no late-night calls. There was only silence. I had cut out the rot, and in its place, something new had a chance to grow. I had my career, I had my friends, and I had, for the first time, my own life. And it was more than enough.